Um, Welcome to this Satsang and the teachings of the six realms. So I make a recording for you guys that is the introduction video to that teaching, because the last online Satsang had a few internet cuts, and so it wasn't really working out technically. So I thought I'd just record the introduction so you can rewatch this and have a good introduction to the teaching, which will follow the next 2 weeks. Let's see, 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, in this video, you can expect a overview of the whole teaching. And if that's something you want to dive deeper, and then you can come online to the sessions, or if it's not something you need at the moment, that's totally fair. And it's always great to look, what does this teaching do for me, and do I need it? What's the goal of the teaching? And not just blindly just practice any teachings that are somehow offered or provided. I also enable the screen recording, so you also have a visual about the teaching and the six realms. And let's dive in. So here is a drawing which was reproduced digitally of the wheel of life. You could call it also the wheel of becoming, because this teaching shows us how to get to the goal of awakening to your true nature and getting out of what we might see as trouble in life. And in our modern days, we have psychology developed as a tool to get out of mental trouble. But back then, that was not really a thing. Yet they had already some tools, and this teaching is one of them, how to find your way to a more calm, peaceful life, and to reconnect with that essence. And I want to start with looking at this picture, which is from a Buddhist tradition. So this tradition I'm teaching here, the six realms, is originated in Tantric Buddhism, which is very close to Tantric yoga teachings. So there is Tantric Buddhism, and on the other side Tantric Shaivism, and they overlap at many parts. And this teaching is very similar, and it differs just in minor parts. And I will point out, or I will go through the Tantric yogic side, Shaivism teaching of this six realms. And yeah, so this is a Buddhist drawing, and you see here this quite fierce person. It's called Yama, also sometimes Mara, and it's kind of the god of death, and this, or the lord of death, and this lord of death turns the wheel of samsara. Samsara means the circle of reincarnation. So what we go through when we are an incarnated being in a body is what happens when we are caught in the wheel, and that's kind of this big circle here. And the Lord of Death, Yama, turns that wheel. And the idea is that we have 6 compartments here, which are different realms, and we can find ourselves in those realms. And the teaching is there to realize that we are in one of those realms, and points us a way out of them. So the goal is actually to exit this whole circle, the samsara, the circle of reincarnation, and find true essence, true nature, which is represented here by the moon on the top left. So that is really where we want to end up, and that's what the teaching is for. So that's the goal of the teaching, and that is a very fundamental goal also of the spiritual path, meaning what we say, what the Buddha teaches, and you can see the Buddha here on the top right, and as you also see, like he points to the moon, like that's where you have to go. He's that enlightened person that wants us to realize where our journey goes, what's the goal. And that is Buddha, like the awakened one, Buddhi, to awaken to our true nature, to that what we are essentially are. Like if you go deeper into what am I, inquiring that question, you will at some point end up at that essence of what you are, hopefully. And that is the spiritual journey. And on the path, there are many tools like this teaching of the 6 realms that help us realize that, and that also give us tools to work with in our daily life. And that's the tantric path, that we don't need to have a monk life or an ascetic life to live in a cave and meditate all day long. To also have a normal life and be immersed in the world and all the problems around us, to find the same truth and the same way towards our spiritual goal. And as long as you cannot see that full moon as the truth, like your essence, what you are, as long as you cannot see it, it's wise to set a goal that points you towards it, and to follow teachings that are embedded in a tradition that actually has worked out quite a sophisticated path you can also walk. So yeah, and I want to have a look at this picture to first see a little bit of the background before we jump into the teachings itself and the details of it. So you see here, there are like compartments, 6 of them that go in a circle, and those are the different realms. And I used AI to upscale this picture, so it was a really bad quality, and it did actually quite a good job, but it's not perfect. As you can see, when you zoom in a little more, like the details just get lost. But it's good enough for us to find a first idea. So we have 6 realms, and I want to just name them so you have an orientation. And originally it was thought that we incarnate as in a lifetime into one of the realms, and then we change our kind of device, our body, and go through those different stages. So let's start with the human. It's called human mind realm, the left top. The human realm, being a human or being in the mind of a human. And then we have, if we go down here, anti-clockwise, that would be the hungry ghost realm. You see those beings have like very big bellies and are actually quite thin, but that's the hungry ghost. I explain what they are a bit more. Then we have here at the bottom, we have the hell realm, where hell is going on. And then we have the animal realm. Then we have the Titan realm, that's the demigods. And we have the God realm at the top. And it's probably going the other way around, but there is no linear chronicle timeline where you go. So those are the 6 realms. And as I said, the goal is to leave the realms to realize the essence of your true nature. And I have found so there are a few more like details which I'm not referring to, also because I'm not an expert in that. So I cannot tell you why, because normally in those depictions, every single item has a meaning, like those different faces, the third eye of this guy here, and look, the animals, like for example, I wrote that down here, the meaning of that in the center. It's what really drives everything. it's those three emotions of greed, hatred, and lust. And they're depicted by different animals. So every single detail has a meaning here. And because I'm not the expert, I don't want to say anything too wrong. But I have made another picture which we can refer to at a later point, maybe a few times. And it's a bit more easy to see what's going on here. So again, I changed the position a little bit, like we have the God realm, we have the animal realm, hell realm, hungry ghost, titan, and human mind. So anyway, we will refer to that later on. Now I want to speak about first an analogy which I got from my teacher, Harish. I got this teaching from Harish about 2 years ago. Was it even more now? And it helped me a lot in my life. And even though I'm probably not the best person to teach that, I find it so helpful that I cannot help but share it. And I find it quite an important and a very accessible teaching. And that's why I'm sharing it now. And for further reference, probably Harish has somewhere online, I don't know, some teachings too, not sure though. But there's also a beautiful book which I want to recommend and bring to the screen here. Oh, I'm somewhere in the middle of it. So it's called The Opening the Heart of Compassion from Lowenthal and Short. And I can highly recommend this book for further study. So if you're interested in going deeper, that is a beautiful resource to read. And also alongside with my mini-series. So maybe order it now, then you have it next week for the call. Yes, okay. So that is that. And first of all, I want to point out the goal and find this analogy, which Harish, my teacher, gave me, or us, when I received this teaching. So we have a wonderful Sanskrit sentence here. And that describes a little bit where we want to end up. And he has this analogy that this teaching of the six realms is, or can be seen like a river that ends in a sea. And the sea would be your spiritual realization, like that goal of where you want to end up on your journey. And the river is your journey, and that's your life. So you flow imagine a beautiful mountain river that is very clear and clean and that flows across down the mountains and across the country, and the water is just in a perfect flow. And that would be your life experience. The water is your life experience. That's you flowing, like your essence flowing, and it flows towards the sea. And like a river, if it doesn't dry out, it's inevitable that it reaches the sea. And that's very similar to the spiritual journey, because no matter what, it's orchestrated, the pattern, that what we call the reality, is orchestrated in a perfect way, so you cannot fail that journey, actually. It can take time, though. And the yoga practice is about realizing that goal, making your journey towards the sea and entering that sea within a lifetime, within this life, actually. And yet they are saying, and if it doesn't happen, it will happen eventually. That's their promise. So you don't have to be frightened. Anyway, so let's speak about that sea, that goal. And here is that beautiful sentence which he translated into English. So, one second. So I just needed to stop the video for a second. Here am I back. So it says, immersion into reality, samavesha, is experientially realizing the primacy of the self that is awareness, chit atma, as the true knower and agent, and that the other layer of personhood, from the void to the body, are mere attributes of it. Let me break that down, because that's important to understand. That's our goal, where we want to end up. So immersion into reality, that means that we not only understand, that we know with our whole being and like holistically experience that what we are, ourself, is self-awareness, or is awareness. And awareness is that one that knows, like the Buddha or body, that knows and that does everything that happens. So it's the one that creates the reality, our reality, and the one that perceives or experiences our reality and our world. And that is Chit Atma, like Chit, consciousness, awareness, and Atma, the very essence of what we are. And that's kind of the self. In yoga, we would say self. In modern language, we would probably say soul. So the soul that is our self is awareness. That's the teaching here. And that is the sea. That's where we want to end up, realizing experientially that we are self, that is awareness, that we are pure awareness, and that we are the one that knows and the one that is the agent that creates. And the other layers of personhood, and here it's said from the void to the body, and he refers here to the 5 layers of the self teaching, which I talked about in another satsang. If you want to know a bit more in detail what that means, then you can rewatch that. I think it's the second satsang or something on YouTube. And those are just mere attributes of that self, which we actually are. So in other words, we identify often as the body or as something like those 5 layers, one of those 5 or a mixture of them. And we misidentify ourselves as that we are that, instead of realizing that we are a self that is awareness. And that whole process is called immersion into reality, samavesha. So that is really the goal, the sea where we want to end up on our river journey. And in the 6 realms teaching, he called it real human presence. So yeah, in other words, that is the flow of the river and of our life experiences. And now it can happen that we forget about that, and that we forget about our aim, and that we kind of get stuck. Imagine you're flowing on the river as water, and there's a little curve or something where you get stuck at the side, and then you become stagnant water that is somehow gets dirty, and there are weeds and mud and reeds and all that stuff, and somehow you don't enjoy life anymore, and there's no flow anymore. So you as water, you're not clear and clean and in flow. You are stuck in the mud and in the reeds. And we don't enjoy that normally when we are in those muddy waters or stagnant waters. And the teaching helps us to get out of them. And first of all, to realize that we are stuck, and then to get out of them. And how do we know that we are in the mud, and how do we know we are in real human presence? So normally when you are in real human presence, you should feel at ease and in a flow. You know, sometimes when life just flows, you feel like, okay, it's everything's all right, and it can work like it is. Why not? and things just are right. There's no problem really. It's just like, it's a fun dance of life. And sometimes there are like bumps and it's a bit difficult, but somehow you're like all right with what happens. So you can fully accept reality as it is. And some other times it's not like that. And then, yeah, when you accept everything, you feel very alive, and you feel somehow all right. And when you're in the mud at the side of the river, when you get stuck, then you feel stuck. You feel something is not really working out, and the world is against you, or that's where we go into the 6 realms teaching. We have 6 different states or behavioral patterns that hinder us to feel that flow. Yes, so flow doesn't mean there is no effort. It can also mean there is a lot of effort, but that effort is willingly be done. And it's not that you suffer doing that. It's like you have the energy to do it. And yeah, so don't misunderstand that. So when we are in the mud, we feel like suffering, and we call it like that if we get aware of it. And that's already the first step. But we have to first allow ourselves also to have that suffering, because sometimes, and that's part of recognizing the suffering is part of the journey to get out of it, because sometimes we just try to push it away, and in a sense that's an avoidance strategy to not feel the suffering, but it will not resolve when we just push it away. And we could call that our shadow sides. And so that teaching is a tool to also explore our shadow sides and to integrate those shadow sides and to work with them. And that is very important, because sometimes in yoga and spiritual communities, we are just like, everything is love and happy life. And no, we, especially in Tantra, we want to look at everything and also at the shadow sides. So the first way of dealing with that is to acknowledge it and to become aware of it. And that's the begin of our path to more freedom and to growth and to our finally spiritual realization. And normally from that suffering also identification and attachment to that arises, and our roles are defined. Like imagine you studied very hard and very much for a title to become a doctor or something. You're really attached to it then. So you kind of attach suffering and your successes, which only could arise through big suffering. And you're very attached to it because you created this identity that is linked to that. And to get out of the suffering, which is still there and maybe unprocessed, we need to first acknowledge and look at it. And the yogic teaching says that behind that suffering is just a veil, so to say, and behind that suffering, you can always look and find your essence, which is a subtle peace or subtle joy. I like to call it subtle joy, but maybe peace works better with you, because it's not like a fun joy or an experience of joy. It's more like a aliveness and a contentment to be alive. So there's this veil, and we call suffering a veil that doesn't allow us to look deeper and to see that subtle joy or subtle peace that is always there and always accessible for us. And that's where the teaching points us to, and that's what we want to work towards, that we can, in any situation, allow ourselves and have the abilities and the tools to take that veil away and see through it and live in real human presence in our innate peace that is always there. So it's not that we can either choose between peace and suffering. It's that the peace is covered by the mud, let's say, by the layers of identification and attachment, and we just have to take them away, and then there is this contentment and beauty and happiness. They say just as an acorn contains within the design for the whole oak tree, so we all contain the ingredients that are necessary to reach our spiritual maturity, meaning to see the sea, to see that subtle joy that is beyond everything. And we can practice that with first the good experiences. For example, you imagine or you experience beauty or joy or something like that. Imagine you are seeing a nice sunset, and you ask yourself, is that beauty which I experience actually in the sunset itself? Or is the sunset just unveiling so I can see through towards my own essence? And then the essence can shine through and create that experience of joy. And then what our mind does, it links it to the sunset. There are some things in our world that can more easily, let's say, lift that veil and bring us in the experience of ourself, of our true nature, meaning having that peace and joy, and some that are kind of pushing the veil more deep, and we contract and we more see or experience ourselves in suffering. But the premise is that everything can be enjoyed or can be seen, or at any moment we can have access to that essence, which gives us the experience of beauty and joy and happiness. And you can start with that easy things, which are sunsets and joyful and easy, nice situations and events. And then you can work your way towards neutral situations where you not feel like much spark, but also not suffering, and see if you can find there that underlying peace that is there. And then you can work your way towards situations you have resistance to and see, is there also that access to that essence that lives within? And can I find that joy to be alive? And then a suffering situation can be just a situation that becomes aliveness. And if you would remove the labels, you can often realize that our mind just calls it suffering, in a sense, like this is such a disgusting situation, or this is shameful, or whatever. But if you would substitute the label of the mind and just say, I feel very, very intense and alive, and could be just another way of describing the same situation. Good. So when we come now to the different realms, we can see them as a spectrum, and that's why I created this little design here. So imagine from the center, here in the center, this blue dot, that would be our sea. That's the essence where we want to be most of the time of our lifetime. And that's when everything is in the flow. And when we now come into one of the realms, one of those compartments, there's a gradient of color, and it goes more intense. And so when you are entering a realm, there are kind of stages. It's a spectrum, and there are different stages which are more intense, or you're like more caught within that realm and that behavioral pattern. And at the beginning it's less and it gets more intense. So there are those 4 stages which we could look at. And it's very normal that all of us are daily probably or often in one or more, sometimes even in all of them, in all of the realms. And that's the teaching to get to know that, to realize that, and to apply the antidote to slowly get out of it and back into that center where everything is in flow. And here are the stages, what happens. So the first one we would say is fixation. That's when we just slightly enter the realm, and that would be a way of thinking. So your thoughts would be in a certain way that describe a pattern of the realm. So let's take an example of something like hungry ghost. Just to make it quick and short, hungry ghost is you can't get enough. And the essence of the hungry ghost realm would be, I am not enough. And when you start to enter that realm, you would start to think like that. And your thinking makes the world seem as it would be a hungry ghost world. So I cannot get enough would be you just need to buy more and more. And you imagine by buying more, you gain some happiness back. Or you feel that feeling of I'm not enough. And it's just a thought or a way of thinking. So, and you believe the story of that thinking. So by buying more, I might feel better, or I can fill that not enough gap. And that would be the first stage. And then you could go a little bit deeper into the realm, and I would be called the delusion, meaning the realm is already coloring your world view. So in the first stage, you just think of it, you have thoughts of it, and the second, you would really believe it. It would be a belief system that when you have your next big thing, gadget or whatever, in your new car or name it, you would be better off because people would see you in a better light or something like that. They would be impressed with you. They wouldn't, you wouldn't feel like a loser anymore because you have this big, fast car or something like that. Because the root of hungry ghost would be, I'm not enough. So you think like, if I have worked enough, then if you get successful, if one is successful, then you will be more happy in a sense, and life will flow. You feel more life. So that would be, you actually believe that. It's coloring your worldview. You would explain to someone else, like, buy a good car and you will be better off. And then we have those possession that is split in 2, partial and full possession. And when you are in partial possession, then that realm is taking over your behavior. Your words, with how you handle or how you meet other people, are in the words of how the realm would speak. You think of it, or you are temporarily caught in that realm, and it speaks through you. So, for example, let's just take an emotion like anger. If you have your new car now and you're very proud of it, and then someone damages your car, and then you get very, very angry, and you're enraged, and you step out of the car and you really scream at the other person or whatever, you damage their car or something like that. And then afterwards, you would realize like, oh, that was not the right behavior. And you kind of say to yourself, well, I was not myself. The rage took over. And in that sense, you can imagine like the energy of the realm, and the energy of a specific emotion took control over you. So it possessed you for a limited time, and you were not able to act as yourself anymore, and you would just be like out of control. And that would be a partial possession, and then eventually the full possession would be that that becomes your permanent state, that you are driven by the behavior of the realm, which would be, I'm driven by I'm not enough, and I don't even realize it anymore, that my whole behavior is just I have an addiction. Would be a good example. Like you have an addiction because I'm not enough. So your addiction, or you have many addictions, is buying new gadgets or cars or spend money or whatever. And you cannot get off because it possesses you. So that would be like the far end. And we would maybe in modern language call it at some point a mental illness. And that would be just being at the very, very edge of one of the realms. In this one, hungry ghost realm, it would be like you cannot help but buy new things, even it's not good for you anymore. But there's this deep feeling of not enough, and you still have that belief. Oh, it's not you even thinking of it anymore, but you still act as that would cure it. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of the introduction, and I might say a few things about the antidote. So the first thing we want to work on when we are realizing, or when we are working with that teaching, is that there is not only the realm, there's also a way out of it. And that would be there are tools, specific tools for each realm. And we want to go, when we speak about that realm, the specific realms, we want to also use specific antidotes to get out of that. But we also want to, we have a general steps for antidoting a realm behavior. And it's also important to understand that you are not the realm, like you're not the hungry ghost or the human mind realm. You're more like you're caught by it. Imagine more like an energy of, we said like earlier on, rage or anger that enters your body or your mind, and that partly takes over. So imagine it more like that the realm temporarily enters you, possesses you, and then can also leave you again. So you're more acting in a way of a hungry ghost realm. And that's just, I mentioned that because I don't want you to think like, oh no, I'm lost in a realm. No, you always, your essence cannot be affected by it, but you imagine you are lost in it. But it's more that there's an energy flowing through you. That is the realm energy. So when that happens, there are some steps to get out of it. And that would be the antidote. And the first thing is becoming aware that you are acting or behaving or thinking in patterns of one of those realms. And generally, that is the best thing you can do. Becoming aware of something you want to change. And that is a practice, reminding yourself as many times as possible and reflecting your behavior and see it through the lens of that teaching. And then remembering the different key points of that realm and matching that with your behavior in the past or in the current moment. And that's how you become more mindful, and that's how you only have a chance to get out of it. So the first thing is always becoming aware of it. And then as a second step, when you're aware, you can release the identification with that realm energy. And that means just like, oh, I am in rage and I'm not myself because that realm, that hungry ghost is playing, or I'm thinking and behaving within hungry ghost. And I allow myself to let it go. So becoming aware and releasing are two steps which feel a bit like the same thing, but it's kind of two different approaches because the second one, the releasing the energy, is that will of getting out of it. So the willingness needs to be there, because sometimes you get aware of it and you still like the behavior of your realm, and you are allowed to also stay in it. So that's not a problem. Or you can do that. But you can also decide to get out of it. And then that's that energy of will and wanting to change, to transform out of it. And often what happens at the same time is that you create a self-judgment when you realize that you are, and when you also have the will to get out of the realm, when you are in the realm. So, and with that self-judgment, that doesn't help. So my little tip here is that you handle that with kindness and self-compassion. So every time you catch yourself being or acting in a behavior of a realm, then at the same time create that kindness and compassion towards yourself, that it's not your fault, anyway not, and that it's all right to be there, and it's all right to want to get out of there. So just in a gentle way, and it's more like an invitation and not a fierce judgment. And then make a conscious decision to antidote the realm, so to pick a tool and change the usual pattern of your behavior. That would be the next step. So the willingness is there. You have self-compassion with where you are at, and then you pick a specific antidote. And that compassion and kindness can also be supported by the divine opposite. So that would be also already one specific tool which you can use for all the realms, but finding the divine opposite. So if your pattern would be I'm not enough, then you find the opposite would be I am enough. And that's already great to rewire your brain into more positive thinking. But what you want to do is make that even greater and divine, that opposite. Like, what would be the most sacred, divine elevation of the opposite? And from I'm not enough to I'm enough, you could make it divine, maybe with the rephrasing of this sentence into something like, my pure existence is of infinite value already. So in that sense, it would be just the opposite, but extravagated. No, what is that word in English? Multiplied in infinite divinity. That could be one tool. Another thing is to build or to keep a meditation or yoga practice that brings you into the present moment. So it's non-conceptual. It's not like an idea in your mind. It's more like focus on the breath, or find a body sensation, or something like that, or make a mini meditation. So something that draws you into the present moment, because that's where real human presence happens. It's always in the here and now, and not somewhere in your mind thinking about tomorrow or whatever. So non-conceptual experience, direct experience of here and now. And another tool which you always could practice is to strengthening your energy. And that is also implementing a yoga practice or meditation practice, the internal energy. And it's just like supplementary, which fosters or supports the whole process of the antidoting. And lastly, also to share your experience with others, to speak about what you're going through. It's helpful for each and every realm. Well, and then we have a kind of purification process if you start to work with that teaching and the antidoting, because what happens is that over a time, when you are caught in a realm or thinking in realm patterns, you can imagine it like there's energy stuck in the body for a time, or like the water is stuck at the side of the river in the mud. And as soon as you work with that normally and you antidote that and you slowly come out of it, you bring that water back into the flow and you release the energy which was stuck. And deeper you are in the realm, you can be actually happy because more energy is stuck and can be released. And that can really spark more learning and more growth. So you don't need to be miserable if you find yourself like quite deep in a realm. It's almost the opposite. You can be happy that you realize now, and you can already look forward to that energy release. And sometimes that is very physical. You can feel like much more energy in your system, or you have this endless energy available suddenly, because it's like when you release a long carried trauma, then you just have a lot of energy. And yeah, the whole thing you can see as a little gift that you receive, and which is nurturing and supporting you towards your spiritual journey, your growth, the journey towards the ocean. Great. So that was my introduction into that 6 realms teaching. And if you feel like you want to go deeper and explore those different realms, and it could be helpful for you, then join me in for the next 2 or 3 sessions. All right, I hope that was helpful. To close this, let's take a few breaths together and chant an Om. So please close the eyes first and feel into your body for a moment. Become aware of the breath that is always in the present moment. If you want to chant, inhale. Namaste.